This episode is brought to you by Audible, the place to go for audiobooks. Spoil your eardrums and get all your favorite books read out loud to you. Go to barenakedbravery.com/audible to sign up, try it out, and get 2 free audiobooks right away. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life, so if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Today's guest on the show is Jake Hemming. This guy is one of the best song storytellers I've ever heard. You'll hear a sample of his storytelling skills as the episode unfolds, and you'll also get a peek into what it looks like to delve into the tough parts of life by being strong through the sensitive moments. Jake is really good at that. He and I talk about the friends that we have in common, the ones we love dearly, and who are epically brave and strong. We talk about the honesty required to go through grief and bereavement and how necessary it is to have community after somebody has passed on. We talk about how hilarious his daughter is, and she is, and he introduces us to Max and Vivian, a duo from the corners of society, and they're featured in his new song. You're gonna love this guy. Are you ready for some bare naked bravery?
I am very ready for some bare naked.
Let's get naked.
Awesome. I mean, literally, that's possible because my office door is closed.
No, I'm going to keep my clothes on.
Okay. Well, that sounds, do what you will. Be comfortable.
Okay. So, Jake, you are here because we know each other from the music scene here in Seattle. And we know each other specifically because through Aaron Stevens, who is a mate of mine, and he has the best description for you, I think, and I completely agree with it, obviously. You are one of the best storytellers through song. And I know that Aaron is, if he's listening to this right now, Aaron's going, yep, because it's true. You have a way with your storytelling and songwriting that really makes the whole room get quiet and like lean in, that's skills with a Z. So kudos to you. And before we pressed record, you were talking to me about bravery and how you don't think that you are that brave.
Right. Yep. That's an accurate statement.
Okay, talk to me some more about that.
Well, I mean, musically, that's the one place where I feel fairly comfortable saying that maybe some of the decisions I make are brave. And it's terrifying every single time. It has not gotten easier ever. I'm absolutely, completely shaking every time I go to play music because I know what's going to happen and I know I have to do it.
Why do you have to do it?
Because there's no other, I guess I don't see an alternative to it. What's the point if you don't? Steve Norman, who you know well, my dearest friend, a long time ago when he first started playing music with us, he and I were talking about a particular song that I was kind of struggling with. And I was terrified because I knew what was going to happen. I was going to start to sing and then I was going to kind of lose myself in that song and be very emotional and very vulnerable. And I didn't know how to do that yet. I hadn't figured this out, and he basically told me that that's the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that matters is like the stuff that you are terrified of, the stuff that you hope no one will ever know, the stuff that you carry with you on your pillow in your bed and are just like sickened to even let out. That's the stuff that's good. It's the only stuff that really makes any difference. So I started getting comfortable doing that musically. I could write a song, write a story that was very painful, and I felt okay doing that.
One of my songwriting mentors, Jan Christ, she talks about how a lot of songwriters have a deep well, like the one songwriting source that they know they can always tap into and pull a song out of.
Right.
Do you have one of those?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Is it a relationship? Is it a moment in time for you?
I'll try not to get too abstract, but
that's fine.
So I was a weird kid. I was an awkward child. I started having panic attacks when I was like 7 years old. I used to hide in my parents' bathroom because it was a safe place. And I would pull open their little window in their bathroom and I would suck cold air through the little screen. And it always smelled like old cigarettes because they smoked, And I would calm myself in there. And I would go through these, and like I said, I'm going way off topic a little bit, but I was raised Catholic. And so I was convinced for a while that I was actually like possessed by the devil or a demon or some horrible thing like that because I didn't know what panic attacks were. And our, priest didn't know either. He looked at me like there was something wrong with me. But through stories and songs and creative stuff, even when I was that little, I found home and I found peace and I found a place where I didn't feel so horrible. So I don't think that I've changed much inside since I was that age. I feel like I'm still a 7-year-old little boy. And so I look at the world when I'm honest, I look at the world that way. So that well is the same well that I tapped into there. So I feel like there's this place where I can just completely let go and find sometimes the darkest and the sweetest things. And I look at them through the exact same eyes that I did when I was that age. I don't feel any difference. So if that answers that, that's kind of like.
Yes, it does answer that. And, I mean, is it hard to find that place for you?
It's hard not to.
Okay.
That's actually more challenging. It's awkward to like stand in line at a bank, listen to people quibble over things, or it's hard to care about things that don't seem very important when you know that this other place exists where everything's very real and very present.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that the harder part is like trying to just fit in the rest of the time. And it's cool that people care enough to be okay and patient with me when I go into that spot.
Well, I think that anytime we hear another artist or communicator or author or politician, anytime they tap into that common place, it is familiar.
Sure.
It's like a familiar pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that familiar pain makes us lean in and go, oh yeah, tell me more about it from your perspective, because I don't quite know my own version of that enough.
When it transcends, it seems like basically any medium.
Yeah.
When someone goes there, it doesn't really matter what format they're there. Yeah, that's cool. It's neat that I feel really grateful that folks feel that from anything I've ever made, because it's
totally
rad.
I mean, in all honesty, you were already on my list of people to like reach out to. But one of the listeners who we know, we have a mutual friend. Yeah. She did the, hey, if you guys don't know about each other, we definitely should, because this guy needs to be on your podcast. I was grateful for the extra nudge because I was like, oh yeah, I need to reach out to him. I think it's just a testament to the fact that I and Aaron and Steve, Norman and Christy are not the only ones that feel this way about the work that you're putting out into the world. And I think that that's a part of bravery that is not often looked at, that usually the person being brave doesn't think that they're being brave.
Okay.
a lot of times they they have the response of, well, wait, wouldn't everyone do this? Like, don't I have to do this? Isn't this an option for me?
Right. Well, it's elusive because I feel like I have to do those things, but then I look at other examples of bravery around me all the time and they just seem so much more clear. It seems pretty like when people just constantly do the thing they're terrified of, but all of the time because it's right. And I have examples of that all around me always. And a lot of times it's the honesty and how direct folks can be when they communicate with one another and how much they support and love each other. That just completely blows me away in the face of like horrible circumstances too. But yeah.
Who's your like most recent top 3 brave people that you have been in contact with recently?
So, it's like, I'm grateful. I get all the brave people, like they sort of cradle around me like this really amazing, like homemade fort out of couch cushions and sort of make it so I can get through my days. But my wife's the bravest person I've ever met, without a doubt.
Wayne is awesome.
Yeah. She lost both of her fathers in and around her pregnancy and did hospice care for them and end-of-life care and held their hands and washed them and took care of them. And she did that while making our person inside her body, which is mind-blowing. But then every day, every single day, if there's something that's scary, if there's a risk to be taken, she just does it. And it's not easy, but she does it anyway. It's really cool. And then my mom is stage 4 colon cancer. She's another person because in infusion rooms, that's all you see is like bravery, love, and fear, You just see those circling around each other. Sometimes some anger, but my mom stays in bravery, love, and fear, She's great. And then Steve's my beacon. He's the guy I go to because he'll never lie to me. Just like my wife, he will never, ever lie, even when it hurts really bad. And he does. I have
to tell you, I'm going to interrupt today.
Yeah, do it.
My favorite story of Steve's, he came on tour with us one time and he plays pedal steel and it like a badass. He plays pedal steel. I don't think I've ever heard anybody play it any better, but he's on tour and every day on tour he wore a black t-shirt. And I was like, Steve, man, like you got to reach out and expand your horizons in your wardrobe. And he goes, no way. Why do you think I wear this black t-shirt? Because I could eat all the junk food I want and drip it all over my shirt and nobody knows.
Steve and I share a deep love for the convenience store on any trips that we've ever taken. Like there's a convenience store between here and, I think it's when we're heading out towards Anacortes, the ferry. So it's out that way. And there's a convenience store that has like a dragon head that's also like a candle holder. And then there's like salt and pepper shakers that are just like demented turtles. And they get these crazy like neon pink tiger rugs. And Steve and I go there and just revel in their treasures. We love we spend some quality time together really expressing our relationship with the convenience store. But yeah, he's amazing. The thing about him is that his life and what he's gone through and what he's experienced, the fact that he even gets up in the morning and puts his shoes on and does what he does is mind-blowing when you get to really know him. And his loyalty is unmatched. If there was a call that I needed to make at 3:00 in the morning, like the body burying call, he's my man. And he won't even ask me what's up. He'll just say, all right, man, come pick me up. There'd be no questions asked. So, and then as far as like an example for musical bravery, he doesn't get credit for what he does a lot of times. He's probably co-written 90% of my material. He's arranged probably almost 100% of it. And I know I'm not the only one. So those are my top 3. My 4th, I'm going to throw a 4th in there just to get weird.
Do it.
A woman named Jean Paremba. And that's because seeing somebody who can throw herself as intellectually into something as they do passionately. And for her, it's really fighting white supremacy and just working on generating very thoughtful conversation, compassionate conversation about inequality. So I see her do it all the time. And the things that would make people squeamish, she just dives directly in. So those are my people.
What do you think about that unabashed leaping? Why is that brave to you?
I think because I don't know how to do it, very easily. I'm slow. I've never been very quick. I've been thoughtful. I feel okay saying that, but it takes me a while. Like if somebody's, like in drama classes or in maybe when you're doing some work with people trying to write songs, there'll be one of the techniques is to just like sing it, like do it now, say what's in you, like just do it. Don't be afraid, just belt it out. And like, that's a very valued thing. And I fucking suck at it. And I don't mean I suck at it like I can't do it. I mean, like what comes out isn't good and it's not what anybody needs. So my body, like my heart, it needs to sit on something and kind of absorb it and think about it and really feel it.
And I would counter that and say that, yes, it might be brave to like leap without looking basically, or just go ahead and do it anyways.
Yeah.
But I would say it's probably more brave to do your risk analysis.
Cool.
And do it anyways. So I have seen through like the conversations that I've had with my podcast guests and everyone else and in preparing for writing my book and everything, that it really has nothing to do with, I mean, yes, we all agree that like leaping without looking is kind of a ballsy thing to do.
Yeah.
But looking and still leaping at whatever speed you need to go is still brave.
That's an awesome thing to say.
You don't have to agree with me.
No, I think that's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. That's not something my brain would ever come up with, but.
Well, I feel like if you see a big, deep, dark pit
mm-hmm.
and you just jump in, that's like, whoa, oh man, okay, gulp. But if you see a deep, dark pit and look into it, mm-hmm. and like really try to get to the bottom of it, and then you
like
still jump
in there and you do it anyway.
Yeah. that's gutsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that lets me off the hook.
It really does. And so now you've just qualified yourself as being brave. So there you go. My job is not to convince you that you're brave, but I do think that it is true. Tell me what you are working on these days.
Okay.
With anything really, but with writing music and also in your education.
Okay. I'm doing lots of stuff. It's like a house of cards. The only thing that's keeping it together is the tension. Every once in a while I'll list it out and I can feel proud of all the endeavors. So I'm playing music a lot, which is wonderful. We have been working in our little rehearsal studio for a year, and we've reformatted the band. I had major spinal surgery a few years ago and lost sensation in my left hand. And so I can feel some pressure and a little bit, and I have muscle control, but I don't actually feel it. Like I could pull a hot potato out of the oven. It's kind of like a party trick. And since that happened, I switched to playing an electric guitar. And that's been really special because it's opened up, that's what I grew up doing. So it's opened up this place that's very familiar and also very raw. And so I've been writing on an electric guitar. We've been getting louder and more dynamic and playing things that we were afraid to play previously. When you get locked into a particular niche, it's easy to just be like, well, we're a folk rock band or a indie folk band, and we write arrangements that are, like that. And now we're referencing glam music and we're referencing MC5 and just stuff that is super fun and inspiring and feels great. And a lot of there's this weird era of like 70s soul country that's kind of fun to look at. But anyway, so that's what we've been doing musically. I played music with my bandmates in Big Sur for a long time. And then we made a transition because we saw the direction that it was going with the electric guitar and with like these songs being a little bit louder and a little bit more dynamic. And so we changed the band. Now it's called Jake Hemming and the Bereaved. And that's partially because it's somber, sad music. It's also partially because I am a wedding officiant and a memorial officiant. So it kind of wraps into that a little bit.
High five to that. I'm not a memorial officiant, but this summer I became a wedding officiant.
Nice. It's the coolest. I love both of them are as rewarding as the other. They're amazing.
It's pretty stinking fun.
It's the coolest. And then we got a new bandmate playing with this incredible bass player named Sean Neal. Who's a wonderful songwriter and played in a really special punk rock band for years that toured and did very well called Dynamite Boy. And so he's replacing our friend Mike Bergstrom, who played with us and played with you. Played with us. I've been playing music with Mike for 13 or 14 years now.
Wow.
And so it's sad, but it's totally for the best reasons. He's married and he's got this amazing life and is doing all the things he wants to do. And it took a lot of bravery for him to come to me and just say like, hey, I don't want to hold this back. So yeah, that's what's going on musically. We're playing on Friday at Connor Byrne, actually, which is going to be really fun on the 28th. And then I'm going to school. So I'm studying child advocacy, maltreatment, mental health services for kids that are victims of abuse and trauma. And I don't know exactly where that's going to lead me, but social services,
What draws you to that section?
I guess my relationships with people that have gone through extreme trauma and have somehow, because of the folks around them and services or just fucking luck, become really amazing, well-adjusted people. So I have dear, dear friends and family that have made it through it and are still working through it. And so their stories are always very important to me. And all of us, I don't care how amazing your family is, all of us will experience some sort of abuse or trauma. And it's the stuff that it gets into your heart. So my own struggles with mental health, I think, has also been a big factor in that. And then recently hanging out with my mom while she's going through cancer treatment and a lot of grief counseling and that kind of stuff, and seeing the effects that it has on children that go through this with their family members. That's another thing. I want to be able to find a way to help them. That's a big thing.
So your band is, half of it's called Bereaved.
Yes.
And your wife went through a really big time of saying goodbye to her dads. Mm-hmm. Your mom has stage 4.
Yep.
Colon cancer.
Which she's rocking, by the way. She's doing amazing. And maybe we'll be, we think she's going to be one of the 5% that makes it out. But yeah,
awesome.
Being in that world is a very intense place for all of us.
I can only imagine what the intensity looks like. Mm-hmm. But how does it pan out for you personally?
Everyone I talk to that works in grief work and bereavement work kind of has a similar little response. And I ask them a lot. And it's like it's this hidden secret, actually really wonderful, special place. There's a lot of joy in that. I believe that we do death very poorly here. And that's very central to me. I've always felt really uncomfortable with the way that we deal with it. It can be beautiful and it can be elegant, and we can do a hell of a lot better job supporting one another. And so I'm drawn to it. There's a music thenologist that works at the hospital. There's the hospice care. And I don't know if you're familiar with music theology.
Mm-hmm. Describe it. What is it?
So I help her unload her gigantic harp out of her, hatchback a couple of times a month. And she has a PhD in a very specific type of music medical application that she looks at all of their blood work and their life support systems and all of the information she has. And she orchestrates and arranges music very specific to that information to allow their passing, their transition, and also to help grief support for their families.
Yeah, I have looked into that myself, because the idea that you can usher someone into the other side by just playing music without a beat.
Yeah.
Or with a slower beat.
Right.
Or in a different key signature. And all of those things are scientifically proven to pull someone into the place that they're going.
Yeah.
It's magic.
It's incredible. Well, I mean, it's like it's the one thing we're all going to do, right? And we're all going to die. And that's just the case. That it's the way it is. And I think that this is very generic stuff, but I think that separating people from their mortality is very intentional. I think that if people were aware of it more often and were closer to it, even fondly close to it, they might live their lives differently. They might vote differently. They might spend their money differently. And so I think that that's something a lot of us probably have to eventually come to terms with. And I get a reminder of it every Friday. Every time I go into an infusion room, I get a reminder of how little we have, how little time we have. And that's it sounds like it's this really sad, dark thing. It's not. It's the opposite. It's like the coolest thing ever, knowing that. It's the lightest, funnest. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I think our relationship is so special because we kind of have the same brain that way. Like, she wakes up every morning and she's like, it's all still here. Like, this is the best thing ever. And it reminds me to do that too. And then when we go spend time with my mom, It's like, it's all still here and it might not be tomorrow. And that combination is really cool. I will make a little side note that the other thing about the bereaved is that it wasn't really intentionally like there wasn't meant to be this heavy bereavement grief thing. It was actually more that we have a gigantic inside joke thing with the film The Big Lebowski, to the point that we're embarrassingly obsessed with it and we have turned off the sound and then done the entire movie just quoting it without the sound as a band before. Although poor Raven, I don't think she's actually ever seen the film still. So she just has to sit there and shake her head while we just talk about the Big Lebowski. So The Bereaved is also because of
that. It's really funny.
Yeah, and Steve Norman came up with that name, Jake Hemming, The Bereaved. So our friend Adam Pranica also has a great podcast called The Greatest Generation. Big Star Wars nerd like myself. He quoted us once. We played this thing at the Triple Door where we did songs of summer, and we couldn't do optimistic songs. We did like the darkest, saddest things ever. And he made a quote saying that he'd like to have us play. He doesn't know if he wants us to play at his wedding or his funeral or maybe both. And so that kind of started making the gears turn that way too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Before we get back to today's bravery, I want to make sure you know about one of my favorite ways to instill bravery and receive mentorship in my weekly routine. If you're listening to this show right now, then I'm fairly certain you'll love this simple idea. And you'll also love this idea if you've ever wanted to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with Elizabeth Gilbert about eating, praying, and loving. Or maybe you want Brené Brown to give you the real DL on vulnerability. Or maybe you want to ask Amanda Palmer how she got so many devoted fans and followers. Or maybe you just want to sit down and have a good belly laugh with Jessie Klein, Amy Schumer, Tina Fey, and Tig Notaro. Those are some of my favorites. Audible is the answer. You can sign up and get 2 free audiobooks right now. And most of the time, the author themselves will narrate the book, which is so cool to hear. Go to barenakedbravery.com/audible to get your free audiobooks today.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your mom's situation, if you're okay with it.
Sure.
What is it like to be living or see someone live with such a big question mark?
It's kind of like it's kind of like walking through through constantly moving ground. Like I take my daughter to a gymnastics class on the weekends a lot, and they have these like trampolines that are really long, and you walk on them, and every time you take a step, it makes the other foot pop up, and she's silly and she has fun and she dances around in this thing, but it's very clear that she doesn't know where her footing is, but you have to keep going. You can't stop, you just have to keep going. And that's what it feels like, really. It's beautiful, but it's exhausting. It's very inspiring. And I know that I'm the least tired person that's probably going through it, but it's an interesting thing. You don't ever expect you'll go through it. Like statistically you will, but my mom is amazing. And like I had mentioned before, she's doing so well at it that she keeps surprising everyone. The only one she doesn't surprise is my sister and I, because we just are like, well, yeah, that's her. That one thing that's cool about it is that it brings you into the present and it brings you into the past in a really interesting way. But your future is very undetermined. And so I think we have a harder time looking forward, even though that would probably be healthier to do it. But we snuggle down and, watch episodes of Little House on the Prairie together, because that's something we enjoyed when we were young. And we reenact some of the things that we really enjoyed. And then we also just soak up every moment we have in the present. So,
do you have any stories that you retell to each other?
Oh, man. Well, so
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So my dad traveled 6 to more months out of the year when I was growing up. And so my mom was very young. She was 19 years old when she started raising my father's 3 children from his previous marriage. She was 20 when she had me. She was 22 when she had my sister. And so when my dad would travel, often the other kids would be at their mom's house, and it would be us with this early 20s woman who was amazing in this house. And it was terrifying and great. Every noise we jumped at. We all stayed in a gigantic bed. We watched old Lucille Ball movies. She read us The Long Walk, which is a terrible thing to read 7-year-old kids. It's the Stephen King book. But it's what she was reading. She used to take super fudge Judy Blume book, and she would inject just horrible, horrible swear words all the time to make us laugh. So Super Fudge and his parents were like the most foul-mouthed humans I had ever heard of. Yeah, she was magic. She could make $4 make this decadent meal, because it was like she'd get loaves of bread and make garlic bread, and she'd go to this little like clam and fish shop type place, and she'd get like buckets of clams, and we would sit there and eat steamed clams dipped in butter with this like loaf of bread. And so we reflect on those things all the time and occasionally recreate them and tease each other, and we're very, very close. It's a cool thing.
I know when my family gets together, there's always like a rotating circuit of like the top stories.
Yep.
And I know that every family has them, but I can only imagine what it's like to retell them with a big question mark.
Sure.
I should say with the question mark of this might be the last time we get to retell this story together.
Sure.
And I don't know how big the question mark is for your mom at this point. Like you said, things are looking really good.
Yeah, she's doing great. So that part's cool, but that question mark's always there.
Yeah. Learning how to say goodbye well is, like you said, something that our culture does a really shitty job of.
Right.
When I had a full chorale of cello students that I was teaching, I had a requirement that I would tell them at the beginning of our student-teacher relationship. I would say, you're not allowed to just go away and not have a goodbye lesson with me. And I would explain it to them like, our culture does a really bad job of saying goodbye. And I think that I need to learn better how to say goodbye. So do me a solid and don't just ghost on me if you're going to say goodbye. Like if you're going to leave or stop taking lessons or go to a new teacher, like these are normal things that happen.
Yeah.
But let's like make a commitment to together practice saying goodbye well. And the students who took me up on that, I was always so grateful. And they were always so happy at the end of that goodbye lesson. You know, they were I could always tell, like they'd come in the room kind of going like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, we know this is kind of pointless. I'm not going to come back for another lesson, all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And the way I would conduct a goodbye lesson is we would start from the most recent song they learned and work our way back to the first song they learned.
That's so awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I mean, it gives me goosebumps now to still think about it, because there were several times where a student who was leaving because they thought they hadn't made any progress.
Right.
And we'd get to the end of their last lesson, having played the first song they ever learned, which is The Little Star.
Yeah.
And they would look at me like, wow, I really do know how to play the instrument. Wow, I really have. And I'm sure a lot of people get to the end of their life, if they've said goodbye well, they go, oh, wow, I really did live a life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you grab onto love and honesty in such a way, and it's profound to watch someone do it. You know, I have a really close friend that's a funeral director, and her perspective has meant a lot to me, because she told me recently that I guess open viewings, open casket ceremonies are plummeting at like this crazy rate in the United States specifically. And I remember the first time she said that, I was like, well, that makes sense. I mean, that's terrifying. People don't want to. And she's like, but that's the problem. It's going to bite us in the ass. We, like every other animal in the world, think of any animal, we need to see our dead. We need to see our loved ones gone. Look at an elephant. I mean, they have to see it. They have to mourn. If you look at a dog and you take one of them away that's passed and you have them, put to sleep, the other dog will circle your home and they'll look for their friend and they won't understand it. And it delays the grieving process and it kind of mutates it in a way. And it can be a problem for us. So her perspective has been really interesting that way. And we'll share another really weird story.
I'll take it. I love that.
Well, I've been working to create a DIY volunteer organization that supplies support for grief and bereavement for families affected by it. And so the idea is that every one of us has a talent, whether it's playing music for people, whether it's cooking them meals, whether it's taking care of their yard, doing handyman work around their home, whether it's taking care of their children, taking them to the zoo. A community all has talent, and we have the ability to go in and help people and stand with them and cry with them and hold them and be that. And we don't do it at all. And that's something that we should do. So I'm trying to make that happen, and hopefully that'll become a reality here soon and start multiplying, because that would make me feel very good. But recently I had the opportunity to interact with a family that had lost a father. And in all of that, we played a wake, which is another example of something really cool that another culture does. Like they do wakes, there's Day of the Dead, there's all of these different things that have been a part of us for long. Look at the Egyptians and the way that they honor their dead. It's amazing. So we did a wake. And at the end of the wake, I was fine the whole time. These were very close people, watching their children and watching the dog walk around the house and be upset. And it was a lot. But I drove my car and I was driving home and I'm thinking, I'm doing so good. This is fine. Like it hurt, but I'm okay. And I'm processing this so normally, and yay for me. And as I was driving across home and I was about to get on the freeway on like 50th, kind of in the U District, Wallingford area, I saw this bunch of things in the road and I was drawn to it. And I started slowing down the car and I look over and there is a raccoon that has been hit by a car. And there's probably 5 other raccoons around it, just hanging out with their person. So their animal was hanging out with it. They look scared, they look confused, they look worried. It's all these emotions that are popping through my head. And I see these raccoons around it, protecting it from the cars driving by, just sitting with their dead. And that's when I couldn't, keep that in anymore. So yeah, sorry, I went a little off there, but that's.
No, I mean, what do you think about, what is it about community that makes the saying goodbye better?
Well, I mean, it's really hard to look at it straight ahead, like we're not good at it. We don't know how. We've never been trained to or talked about just looking at the reality of our mortality. It's something we're terrible at. And I think that it becomes easier to be brave when you have other people holding you up, and I think we're supposed to, if you look at our history, we're social beings. We're supposed to have people there. So being open and brave and accepting of people to support you and help you, I think is pretty important.
I fully agree with that. I think that, when I've gone through some of my lowest moments, the people that have empathized with me in the middle of that are the ones that I am still close with, even though we haven't talked in years.
Yeah, there's an exchange. Yeah.
There's that magic thing of camaraderie that happens. When you go through it, like actually really go through it with somebody. Yeah, they are your comrade in arms. They're your comrade in grief.
Yep, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Oof.
I have another story if we ever get to it.
Yeah,
it's like a cascading effect.
Let's do it.
So the other thing I've been thinking about, and this relates to some of the art that we're trying to make right now, is I love stories. It's like the best thing we do is tell stories. My grandparents are very important to me, or were very important to me, and they were great storytellers and just wild people. But there's a song that we're working on. It's called Vivian and Max. And it's one that I'm very attached to and very proud of. I work at a vitamin store. You're in my office right now, at a vitamin store.
There's all sorts of posters behind you, and it looks like a calendar.
Yeah, and there's like motivating things, and probably people like that are very like vascular. That's very important. lots of vascularity here. But in my vitamin store, I get all kinds of different people. I get people that are fighting cancer. I get people that are like awkward 14, 15-year-olds that are trying to get bigger because they think that'll solve what's going on in their lives. I get so many incredibly brave women that are going through what this world throws at them at an alarming pace. And then I get these interesting folks that come in and change my life, on a regular basis. So recently I had a man come in, I guess it's been a little over a year, and his name is Max. And Max has paranoid schizophrenia, and he typically comes in every few months when he kind of feels stable and gets off his medication for a couple of days and then has a hard time. But he comes in, and the first time Max came in, he was wearing pajamas. And he walked around, he started making connections all over the store. He's red, green, blue, it's Christmas time and an igloo. And he'd just have these amazing prose. And he'd pick up magazines and pieces of paper, and he'd like write little things, and he'd circle messages, and he'd find connections. That was his superpower, is finding connections in my store. And I'm a very sensitive person, and I get anxious and overwhelmed by weird things. I believe in everything, by the way. I believe in everything. Voodoo, God, atheism, all of it. I believe in all of it. That's my weakness. Everything that you could believe in, I believe in. So Max walks in, And the whole time he's in there, my heart's starting to beat really fast and I'm getting really uncomfortable. And then I feel really self-conscious. Like, am I reacting to his mental illness? Am I being insensitive? Am I terrified by it? Like, what's going on? But it's a different feeling. I've never had it before. And so as he walks around the store, it just gets intense and more intense and more intense. And finally, Max stops and he looks at me and he says, "It's a little bit too much, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah, it kind of is, man." He's like, "Okay, I'm very sorry." And then he proceeds to tiptoe around the store, doing the same things, but tiptoeing. And he gets quieter and quieter. And he starts to walk up, walk to leave. And he turns around and he walks to me. And as this whole thing's happening, I have this, mantra of a thought, which I normally do because I get stuck in my own head. And I keep repeating myself, this is the bravest man in the world. It's the bravest man in the world. And it gets louder and louder and louder. And he starts to walk away and it just keeps getting louder. And he stops and he turns around and he walks up to me at the counter. He reaches in his pocket and he looks through some things and he takes a card and he puts it on my table upside down, slides it to me, and he walks out. And so he leaves the building and I just stare at the card and I keep hearing that mantra louder and louder and louder. It's the bravest man in the world. It's the bravest man in the world. And so I take the card and it's electric and I turn it over and it's a digital download code for a song called The Bravest Man in the World.
Shut up.
Yep. I'm serious. So that's absolutely the truth. So,
I really do think I'm not advocating for someone with a serious mental health issue to not go get treatment by any means. However, I do think that the folks that have bipolar or schizophrenia, they are our unicorns.
Sure.
They are our magic people.
Well, it's neurochemistry. If you take out one portion of a person's ability to perceive, right, the synapses become stronger in another area. So it's the same as somebody with like heightened hearing abilities when they're deaf. I think that's pretty amazing. So yeah, that's Max. So that's half of the song. And then the other thing is that I've been obsessed since I was about, 8 or 9 years old with Vivian Lee, actress. She was, Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. She was I think she's the youngest woman to ever win an Academy Award. And she was in Streetcar Named Desire, which is incredible Tennessee Williams production, and with Marlon Brando. And Vivian Lee had bipolar disorder. And she also had tuberculosis. And you treat tuberculosis with steroids. And steroids make someone with bipolar disorder become psychotic. So she had this really, really difficult life. She was married to Sir Laurence Olivier. She was constantly put in and out of institutions. In fact, in Streetcar Named Desire, she's wearing this blonde wig and it's pulled very tight down across her brow. And people are like, "That's nuts. Vivian Lee has this beautiful hair. Why would she do that?" And it's because it was to hide the burn marks from the electric shock treatments on her forehead. And so the song that I'd been working on, it was a little bit after I'd come out of spinal surgery and been dealing with that, was I wanted there to be a conversation between the two most romantic, honest characters I knew, and that was Vivian Lee and Max. And so that's the song. It's them talking together and relating to one another. So that's my story about that, whether it's relevant or not.
No, it's totally relevant. I think that, and you're going into a season, or you're in the midst of a season where you are dealing with and learning about and learning from people who have these serious mental health issues or traumatic occurrences or events in their past. And so it completely applies to this. I'm really curious to see where all of this goes, because just in the future for you, I am waiting with bated breath, because I see that the people that you touch through your work in the future they're going to really need you.
That's very sweet. I hope
it's not sweet. It's just true.
Cool. I hope I can help. Well, I'm very excited, specifically with everything, with music, with school, but with music, the people that I'm surrounded with. We have a vocalist and a keyboard player, Raven Zoe, just unbelievable, and brings out all the best things and makes me feel braver about the way that I sing. And with Steve just being at the helm of things with us is incredible. And Sean, our new bass player, who's unbelievable. And then Derek, who's my brother, and I've known since we were children, playing drums and playing with us. I'm very, very excited about what we get to do that way. And then with people like my wife and my mom, and my sister and all these absurdly wonderful folks in my corner. Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm a very lucky person. And my daughter, oh my God. So, yeah.
So let's end with a final thing.
Okay.
for this.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me the top, let's stick with 3 since we started with 3 earlier. The top 3 most hilarious Scarlett moments from the last.
There's so many. So when Scarlett was maybe 14 months old, she's a very young speaker. I'm unabashedly proud about my daughter. She's the best person I've ever met my whole life. And it has nothing to do with, she just is her person. Like her mother, she is going to cut through this world and want for nothing. And the bodies will lie about her. It'll be amazing. But at 14 months old, I danced her to sleep at night. I've been dancing her to sleep at night since she was born. And I was carrying her and dancing her. And I got her to sleep. But still, for about 20 minutes, I was just carrying her around because it felt good, like holding those. It's a whole nother thing, Having their heartbeat against yours is another thing. It feels, I want for nothing when I'm holding her. The only other time that I feel that good is when I'm performing music. And this I get when I just think of her. I get that feeling. But anyway, so I'm walking around and dancing her. And after about 20 minutes of her being clearly out, I lay her in her bed and she looks up at me, instantly opens her eyes, goes, "Up, Papa." I said, "Scarlett, I thought you were sleeping." She's 14 months old. I thought you were sleeping. And she goes, "Ha, pretend night. Funny, baby." Yep. That's my little girl. She is obsessed with David Bowie, and she loves the Ramones and the Clash and Explosions in the Sky, and I'm trying to think of all of her favorite bands. Her favorite songs the only thing that she likes that I write.
Just as a reminder, she's like 2 right now?
She's 3 now. Yeah, she's 3 now. Her favorite songs are the saddest songs that I write, and she gets upset if I try to play anything that isn't terribly sad. Yeah, she knows the difference between the 4 different, I guess, Nick Drake albums. She's like, "Papa, that's not Pink Moon. This is Pink Moon. This is 5 Leaves Left." And then if I try to play Motown music that's like too late, she'll say, "Papa, I want to listen to early Motown. I want to listen to JJ," which is who she calls James Jamerson, famous bass player, and Papa Zito, which is Benny Benjamin, the original Motown drummer. So last night she told me she was sleeping. She rolled over, and this is very much like her mother. Instead of, exhaling or saying some random thing, she said, "Papa, spiders think that blood is juice." Yes, they do, Scarlett. Yes, they do. That's the case. So, she's my little Buddha. She's amazing.
That's great. Well, in light of that, we think that you are brave.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm even awkward after this, but I feel awkward all the time, so it's good.
You're not alone. You're not alone by any means.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you
for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here.
I would love to be here all night.
Yeah.
After recording this conversation, I went for a walk outside, something I do to kind of break up the day when you work from home. Somehow everything outside seemed a little more sparkly than usual, and I have no doubt that Jake Hemming's conversation had something to do with that. There's nothing like talking about death to make you really take an honest look at life. Thank you so much, Jake, for giving us that gift. Okay, so as this episode wraps up, I'd like to challenge you to do or say one thing you'd like to do or say before you die. If for some reason you or a loved one didn't have a whole lot of time left, what would you want to say? Which stories would you want to retell? Whose neck would you want to hug a little tighter? Which phone numbers would you call one last time? Maybe it's something you'd like to say in a simple tweet or email. Maybe it's a random text to someone you haven't heard from in a while. I encourage you, just say what you need to say. If you took this challenge and you want to let Jake or I know, you can tag either of us in a social media message or shoot us an email. Jake Hemming and I are both on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more, and all those links along with the other resources we mentioned in the episode are in our show notes. You can find all of that by visiting barenakedbravery.com. And that's our show this week. I just want to thank you so much for listening. There's a lot of stuff that you could be listening to right now. And Jake and I do not take it lightly that you chose us to listen to and have as a soundtrack for your day. If you enjoyed it, though, as much as we enjoyed making it for you, then we encourage you to give us a review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. It really does help us out a lot. And all the bravery that we discussed deserves to be spread as far and wide as possible. So even if it's just a quick tweet or email to a friend, you are a part of all of that. If you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, please visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm really looking forward to being with you next week. We have some awesome things in store. And until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.